is Todd Miller. I am the Senior Director of Master Data Management for FleetPride, and my responsibility is to lead the team that builds all of the product data for the website, the new item creation for our mainframe, and basically manage all of that content.
Hello everybody, I'm Robert Frymuth, so I'm Senior Manager at FleetPride of our Master Data Management System. And my role here is to kind of guide our roadmap and be that segue in between our business group and our IT groups, and ensure that our system is configured and working up to the company's perspective from a data governance, SKU creation, and syndication perspective.
And FleetPride is one of the largest distributors of parts for the heavy-duty truck industry. So basically, we are located in the United States. We do the lower 48 states. We have about 400 locations, and our goal is to keep the country running. So everything that you see in a grocery store, everything that that you buy has been delivered most likely by a truck. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have the parts and service for those trucks. So, to talk about some of the problems and challenges we had before we started using Stibo Systems STEP platform, we didn't have good data syndication. We didn't use any real workflows. Everything was handled in an offline system, basically in a SQL database. And what we wanted to do was bring scale to the operation. So that's why we started looking for a platform that we could bring in.
The reason why we selected Stibo Systems for our platform usage is really the flexibility and usability from a business user perspective. You don't necessarily have to be an IT professional to configure a workflow or manage values across attributes. The power at hand, if you will, from a business user perspective gave us the flexibility to design and come up with new workflows to onboard and syndicate products versus having to rely on an IT team, adding a workflow state or approval on some data. So that speed to market, if you will, is really what we were focused on, and Stibo provided that for us.
Yeah, so the primary goals and objectives for this was to have a repeatable process that we could train others into. So when we onboarded new employees, we'd be able to bring them on board and teach them how to do it and not have to, we'd have documentation to hand over. We'd be able to do that, but we also wanted to syndicate data faster. So instead of updating the website maybe once a month, we wanted to get to daily.
So some of the productivity achievements that we've made by selecting Stibo, being able to manage all of that data in one location, really streamline that process for our users. So, with the focus being on speed to market, obviously, utilizing those workflows for our business users to create SKUs, enrich them, including digital assets, and then using the approvals inside of STEP allowed us to syndicate that data downstream to our e-com and our warehousing platforms quite quickly.
I'm going to focus in on images. So when I started and we started down this journey, we only had about 30,000 parts with an image. And we thought that was really good because that covered a certain percentage of revenue. And once we got on board, we figured out that, you can't sell a part online without an image. And we were able to increase it up to 500,000 parts with an image within the first year. So very quick, very quick return on that investment there. And we were able to see that because of having the platform and having the digital assets in there and being able to publish them quickly. So, talking about scale and expansion for this, it has been quite impressive to watch what has happened since we stood the system up. We started out with a very, very limited SKU set. We weren't able to, say, onboard everything from our key suppliers. We were only able to carry a very small assortment. We've actually quadrupled the number of SKUs that we have and that we're managing in the system, and we haven't had to quadruple the staff. And that's what's so impressive is we've been able to take all this data that we get from these suppliers and normalize it and then push it out. We've worked in the automotive industry for a long time, so we work with aces and pies. And that was one of the real things that drove us to the Stibo platform was that it had native functionality to handle aces and pies. And so you're talking hundreds of thousands of parts that can come in automatically through the workflows. We can stand them up, we can get them on the website. We've been seeing huge SKU count increases, basically month over month. And that's really what has helped us scale. We talked about the images where we went from 30-some thousand to over 500,000. We'll be over 1 million probably by the end of next quarter. So there's a lot of scale that we can leverage here, and it doesn't require a lot of people for that scale, and that's really what we were after.
Yep.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the Stibo Systems YouTube channel.